Hello, ladies. I hope that you are enjoying your home and that as you listen, you develop great plans for its improvement. Today's video, I began by telling you, please click the link in the description box and go to the post on which I have embedded this so that you can see the rest of the article. And also, I hope that you will start out with appearance and preparation for the day. And one of the reasons for bathing and dressing and getting to where you look your best and feel your best is that it also gives reduces stress and sets a tone for your day. Why don't you experiment? I have suggested this a couple of times where one day when you don't really prepare and you are needed right away for something and you're not really dressed up or ready for the day, see what it does for you during the day. See what kind of day you have. If you've had success, if there's been all kinds of mishaps, we will see. And it's not to say that if you get dressed, everything's going to go perfectly. Many of you who are of a vital age and of vital years have discovered you can get all dressed up, be in a perfect mood, have your tea, make your list, do your prayers and exercise, take care of your appearance, and you can still have some disaster. Or I know that I have heard ladies say that they've gotten all dressed up and gone to some event where they were needed or something, or someone was supposed to come over, or some cruel words were said to her, and she said, one lady told me, she said, I got all dressed up specially for this person, and when they started to launch into criticisms and cruel words, she said, after that I never wanted to wear that dress again. And so just because you get dressed up doesn't guarantee that you'll have better success in your day and in your mood and in other people, but it actually helps you, and it helps you develop your attitude towards the day, and it gives it a start, and it sets a tone for you at least. And so today I just would like to list those things that are included in preparation. Of course, appearance before anything, because if you don't, then you'll find that you're showing a bad impression to your children and to your family and to anyone that you're associated with during the day, that homemaking is just a place where we just lounge around and do nothing, and that we don't care, and that we get dressed up to go somewhere else but not for home. Whereas at home, I think it should actually be the most important thing, because it is an appointment by God. The Bible says that the women at home should be guarding the home and guiding the home and keeping house. I will try to include those scriptures in there in the post, if you'll go to the post. Now today I'm going to give you those 5 things in 5 minutes. You get yourself your cup of tea, and I have my cup here. I always choose one that goes with whatever I'm wearing or the room that I'm in, and I will put anything in here. I might drink my water in it, and I might have a hot water in it with a little squeeze of lemon, and I might have regular tea. So when I say tea, it's just a formality. And then you make your list of all the most important things that need to be done. Maybe 5 things that have to be done. You might be lucky to get one of them done. But that's homemaking for you. And it's up to every homemaker to develop her style and her quota of things to do according to the needs of her family and how her house runs and how her schedule runs and how the needs of her family. And since you've come here to listen, I need to remind you that I am sharing what I can according to my own experience, which is uniquely different than everyone else's. You're different from me too. Does not mean that you will follow it, and you will have to test everything out to see if it works with your family. I really would advise everyone to develop their own style according to their needs at home, according to their family's needs, what serves your family the best. So, tea, your list, your appearance, bathe and dress, do the best you can. Just act like you are in the most important place in the world. A lot of people get jobs to go to other people's houses to clean them or take care of their children or just have this career. Well, you in the home already have that, and I believe that you should dress for it. I think it's a great example, and especially not to dress or behave in an inferior way. You can have everything that you go somewhere else for. You can have tea at home and not pay a high price. You can dress up at home. You do not have to spend fuel and petrol to go somewhere else for what you can have at home. Anything you like out there, you can do in here. And most homes have several different sections in them or rooms. I have created rooms sometimes out of one room that was intended to be a room by taking the corners and making a library in one and making a music area in the other, or making a tea room in the other. And anything that you think you can do better out there, you can do in here. And of course, now we have the opportunity to get all the things that we would go and get somewhere else. Recently, and then the exercise, I wanted to emphasize that even if you do one stretch, do something, or even if you just walk through your house, and when you walk through your house, you can remember this scripture from the psalmist David: I will walk in my house with a perfect heart. And if you walk through your house or a stretch, it balances your mind so that you can approach the home with good judgment and with love and with a good feeling of well-being. I realize there are a few of you that come here, but you are not few when it comes to importance. And so I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things today, but first I wanted to encourage you to get yourself a blank book. And in this book, I used to dread doing, in the old days, a diary. When you wrote a diary, you just wrote what happened during that day. I did not know all the different aspects of having a journal or a diary, and so I would abandon them almost as soon as I began, because the day did not go the way I wanted it to go. And then I realized that some people were just taking time to write where they went and what they bought, and when they changed the last time they changed the sheets or something, because it helped them to look back to see when they last did something, or when they last changed the filter on the furnace or something like that. And that's another aspect of having a journal. And then I found out that other people were doing their plans and dreams and their ideas on here and sketching out house plans, floor plans, and I wrote down a couple of things. It's a house plan book, and then also how to make things, and leaving a record for what their thoughts were about certain things. And for me, it changed everything when I found out there were different things you could do with this. We used to save if we went somewhere and there was a little menu, or there was a napkin, a fancy napkin. And I was in the era when they first came out with these beautiful fancy printed napkins, and we would save them, put them in our journal, and then write down what the event was, because they were to us so unique and so pretty. And so you can start your children on these little diaries, but put good things in them. Remember the admonition in the scriptures to think on things that are good and pure and lovely and of strength and goodness. And also, some diaries, I'm sorry to say, are full of complaining. And I noticed that even Lillian Maud Montgomery, who wrote The Anne of Green Gables, had written a diary, and I think you can get it somewhere, but I had read it once from a library, and she had been rather resentful because she had spent so many years caring for other people and hadn't had her own life. But she eventually did get married and have her own children and her own home. But yes, and some of it may be okay to show that when we have hard times, that eventually we come out of them. And so to have a journal for the homemaker is really good because it tells you what you've done already and what may be needed to be done. And I use them also for my lists and my other notes on my thoughts. And that's just an idea for you. Always check it out, see if it's going to work for you. Now, we talked a little bit about homemaking, and last time I was here, and redeeming the time was one of the questions that I had, is what is the difference between redeeming the time and saving the time? So I've read your comments and found that you have very good ideas, and I remembered one was to redeem is to rescue something from uselessness, to rescue something from bondage. So if you were to redeem the time, you would have a look at what your time wasters are and say, could I put that to better use? Unfortunately, all the magazines of the 1960s and on were constantly blaring out the headlines of saving time by actually making us more rushed or using ingredients that were already, boxed ingredients, so you wouldn't have to take time to measure or use natural ingredients. And so it was all about saving time. And so and it was different than redeeming the time. So redeeming the time is to rescue it from uselessness, rescue it from bondage, rescue it from a feeling of being used the wrong way. So to redeem is to rescue someone from bondage or from the wrong master. And so if you want to think about that a little bit, then you might find yourself changing some ways that you do things. Now, as being a homemaker, I like to have this second part about how to, start your homemaking day. If you have children, that will be different. You'll start out with getting them dressed in their appearance and showing them how to take care of themselves, and also preparation for their first meal of the day, their breakfast. And I would really like, if you're homeschooling, you have this wonderful opportunity to take your time and learn how to teach your children nutrition and how to feed them things that you make from natural ingredients instead of plopping them down there with cereal, and unless it's the homemade kind. And so the freedom that you get at home comes from God, because you decide what your schedule will be. You'll decide what makes your family function the best, and what brings out the best in all of you, and what builds you up one another. And that's why home life is so important. But in a way, the powers that be want to attack it. They don't like it, because you have power in your home, and authority. Now, authority is not always power, and power is not always authority. But your authority in the home has been given by God, because the Bible says that the women, the Christian women, should be guarding and guiding the home. And it gives many instances of this. Some of the things that we see are just examples in the parables of Christ, just little tiny things you might not have noticed. Is the woman that swept the floor so she could find something that she lost. And how many times have you swept and found something, that lost matching button, or even a coin, yes, or some other I've found some little attachment things that went on a door, so just little things about the woman at home, or the woman that was baking a cake, or the woman that was preparing a room, or, because they were at home, they could do this. So I think that we are, in our era, more time conscious. But at home, yes, we're time conscious. We want to get things done while it's light. And while things are open, we have to go and get our groceries. But we are not neglecting the better part. We can be so time conscious that we forget about the heart of the matter and the heart of the home. Sitting still, writing in a journal, talking to your family, talking to your children, and doing things that are worthwhile. And that's what redeeming the time is. It's doing things that are worthwhile and that benefit your family and benefit your home. If you are concerned about redeeming the time and making the best of your time, if that's really something that's nagging your mind a bit, ask God. That was the one thing that I wanted to include, was the prayer. I wanted to make sure you knew what those 5 things were when you get up. Is having your tea, making your list, your prayer, your appearance, and your exercise. And I always like to have the prayer last because I would like to ask God to help me do all the rest to accomplish everything on my list. And sometimes I don't get it all accomplished, but I feel like that at least I made an effort and that God was with me in what I did do. So I ask God to help you make good use of the time that He's given you. Now, those of you who are under stress in your home for some reason, whether it's just the house itself that seems overwhelming, or the responsibilities that you have, or maybe you have people in your life, whether they're actually in your home or just a friend, a relative, church members that are having problems, and you're feeling the stress of it, I will tell you that those 2 things that I've already mentioned, and one was preparation, your appearance, and those things that I mentioned on that list, just getting your mind in gear for the day, and having a clean house, going around from, we used to say go around clockwise around your house and just kind of tidy up, clean up, without getting too deep into something, just a surface clean so that it looks orderly. It can really balance your brain. It can really help alleviate stress. So a clean house and taking care of your appearance, those 2 things can alleviate some of the stress, can help you bear it better. And when I knew a lady that whenever one of her older, it was back in the olden days, one of her older children did something that was shocking to her or displeasing in some way, she would start cleaning house because it alleviated her stress, and then she ended up with a clean house instead of being all broken down and depressed. And sometimes people that do give homemakers a bit of trouble or stress, they really want her to be unhappy at home. Many people are jealous because women are at home, and sometimes even the men can be very upset because the woman is at home. They imagine she is not doing anything worthwhile. This attitude has gone on as long as I've ever known about it. I've heard barbs against homemakers ever since 1950s. Just remarks, just disrespectful remarks about the homemaker and about homemaking or homeschooling. And I would like to talk a little bit about how I came into homeschooling and what my motivations were and what I liked about it. So take time also during the day to read a little bit. Put that on your list. If someone calls you or texts you or asks you, what are you doing today? You can say, well, I've got to go around and make all the beds, and then I'm going to load the dishwasher, and then I'm going to clean the fridge, and then I'm going to read page 21 of such and such a book that tells me how to do something. And then I have another book I've been promised somebody I would read, who sent me a book that she wants me to read. I'm going to read 1 chapter in that. And then after that, I'm going to listen to somebody talk about some subject that I'm interested in, so that you have a list of things that you can tell people if they ask you what you're doing. So take time to read and to write. You might say, I've got some correspondence to catch on. I'm writing to my granddaughter. Or be on guard for your home. The Bible talks about this, Titus 2 especially, to guard and guide the home. If you could look up guard, you would be astonished at what it involves. It involves a huge responsibility. You take charge of something and you guard it, and then you're aware all around of someone trying to sabotage it. For instance, if you are a guard of a door and you can only allow certain people in that have a pass or permission to come in, you're going to be watching anything suspicious. You're going to be watching people trying to slip past this person or that person, and you're going to just imagine how much strength it takes to guard, and you have to guard the home and not be lacking alertness. And this is the thing, is be on guard, because the culture around you is huge and it will sabotage what you're doing, whether it's homeschooling your children or just being home and wanting to accomplish something, sewing your own clothes, or making some plans in here and trying to follow through with them, learning something. And you're going to find out that the world wants to sabotage it, will try to sabotage anything that's good, anything that's lovely, anything that's worthwhile. So that's why you have to be on your guard. And one of the things that steals and robs the homemaker is time, when other people and other things want to absorb your time. You'll hear about something maybe on the news, and it gets your brain whirling with all kinds of anxious thoughts, and then you feel stress in your breathing, and then pretty soon you feel a lack of concentration. You can't read something and actually see what you read. You can't be doing your needlework and your knitting and your laundry and without this stress. And other people can get you going where you're doing things for them outside the home constantly, so that when you come home, you have to speed up everything. You can't enjoy your kitchen. You've got to hurry. Everything is hurried. And even the children can get the sense that you're giving it a hurried brush at everything. And the other thing that I wanted to warn you about was something that's kind of a trap for many homemakers. Young homemakers, especially, maybe older ones, I don't know, is the trap of ministry. You could be happy in your home. Maybe you have no children in the house at the time, or you don't have children yet, and and you're telling someone how happy you are at home, you want to be a good homemaker, etc. And they look at you as someone that they could use in their ministry. And so ministry can be a real trap, because ministry is not homemaking. Your homemaking, however, is a ministry. But some people have these formal ministries where you join up and you go and do the things that they have planned for their ministry. And it involves travel, it involves leaving your home or even selling your home. And so you go and do all these things that are apparently helpful in someone else's ministry. Just keep your home as your ministry to your family. Making the bed is your ministry to your family. Keeping your house clean and healthy and serving foods that are natural, that's your ministry to your family, because it will build them up physically and spiritually. When people get run down physically, they also become weak mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That's why the health is so important in the home. Your ministry is to your family and to your home. If you're alone with just your husband, then your ministry is to help him on his way. And don't let other people talk you into ministry outside of your own family and your own home. What I have discovered with some of these ministries, and of course I'm a preacher's wife of 50 years. I've been around these people. I've been around all their all the programs that they put on in other places, and they want you to come and help them with this 2-week thing or 3-week thing, or just maybe year-long thing. And I have seen what it really is. And what it really is sadly, they often get young people out of the home that maybe are homeschooled, or they've graduated from school, and they these people think, well, you could come in and work in my ministry, but what it is, it's just free labor. You're ending up doing a lot of kitchen work, a lot of cleaning and hard work that you could be doing at home for your own family. And some of these ministries don't promote the home. They don't promote the family. They don't promote getting married, having children, taking care of your own family, being natural, and creating a lovely home. They don't promote anything like that. Now, some ministries do, but to get you out of the home is so sad, because I have seen men who will go and participate in a 2 or 3 week event that's for a ministry, neglecting his own family at home. In the meantime, his children start having problems, and you can become very addicted to these kind of things because they're all so successful and positive, and everybody's so happy, and they're singing praises all the time, so that when the man comes home, he falls into a depression because things at home are not as nice. In other words, there's hard work to be done. There are responsibilities. There are bills to be paid. There are children to be trained. There are, it's just a different atmosphere. And whereas out on a ministry, it's this attitude of worship going on all the time. And I'm sure that I am going to lose votes. As in Wives and Daughters, who was it that said, was it Lady Harriet? We shall lose votes. So she had to go out and subdue the populace and make them like her again, because she said they would lose votes. And but because everybody, you say ministry, everybody's eyes lights up, and they think that's so holy that someone would start a ministry and you would join, and you would leave all your worldly cares behind, so that it's not so materialistic and everything's spiritual, and you go on these missionary journeys. And listen, your best missionary journey is your home with your children, especially those of you who are homeschooling. That's your missionary journey, and your home is your mission field. You can take your whole family somewhere. If they need to go somewhere and someone gets an itchy foot and they want to go somewhere, just take them all and go on your own little ministry to your family, to some place that they could learn from or enjoy from. But you don't need to join a group on a ministry, and because it's detrimental to the home. And I will tell you that I have seen it firsthand with people that I know that get caught up in these things. And I will say that the best ministry is the home and the family, because people could come, when people get tired of following the world, they will come to you. They will come to your home and your family and want to know how to get their lives straightened out and how to duplicate what you have in your home and your family. There are a couple of things I need to read to you, and I get my content from other books that have been written about past times because they're copyright free, and then I can comment on them. And so one of the things that I learned in Wives and Daughters here, I just wanted to explain this right here, was, I want to mention this. I won't be able to read it exactly, but the whole story begins showing the happy relationship that Molly has with her widowed father as a young girl, and how she grows up and begins to see that life is going to seemingly cheat her of just about everything that she values. Her father gets remarried, and her friendships, the people that she loves the most, pass away or leave to another country. But it just shows throughout here how she learns from some things. And when her father remarried, the widow that he married came with a daughter about the same age as Molly. And Molly was excited to be friends with her. Well, Molly was a sensible, subdued young lady, and the stepdaughter, the stepsister, was flighty and excitable, and loved to do things socially. Molly was more quiet and pensive. She liked to read a book, go for a walk, etc. And Cynthia got her involved in trying to extract herself from a debt she owed someone, a young man that she had apparently promised to marry, but she changed her mind. And so she sent Molly with the money to meet this man somewhere and give her this note and this money back to him. And Molly was seen. And so the village just erupted in gossip about her, and they said, Molly Gibson has lost her virtue. And I remember, was it Lady Cumnor, who brought the stepmother into her house and said, you have failed your daughter, Cynthia, because you have failed to teach her propriety. And the mother said, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said, Cynthia has made the Gibson girl a cat's paw in, trying to extract herself from Mr. Preston. She's made the Gibson girl a cat's paw. Well, a cat's paw, if I haven't, hope I am not repeating myself, the last video I may have explained it, was based on an old legend of a monkey who wanted some chestnuts to eat that were being roasted in the fire. I don't know if the monkey threw them in or not. I don't know the whole story. And so persuaded the cat, when the chestnuts were roasted, persuaded the cat to get the chestnuts out with its paw, but the cat's paw was burned and injured. When he got the chestnuts out, the monkey benefited from it. The cat was burned and injured, and the monkey got all the benefits from it. And so Molly Gibson's trip to pay off Mr. Preston, her reputation was burned, and yet Cynthia got all the benefit from it. She didn't have to face this man, and she didn't have to pay him back, and she got somebody else to do it. So this is one thing you have to be careful with as a homemaker, and warn your children not to be a cat's paw, and don't take messages to one another, to other people. Don't say, and you got to really watch on anything you do as a homemaker. You'll be texting someone, or you'll call someone and tell them about something good you saw. Or they want you to contact that person for them and ask them more information, or they want you to find this thing for them, or take them, I don't know, I'm trying to think of information that I've gotten from friends who will say that all they did was say something casually, and the person wanted them to go a little bit further and get more involved. And so don't become a cat's paw for anyone. Don't take messages to other people. Make other people, when they ask you for something, tell them where to go to get the information themselves, or otherwise you become a cat's paw, and it can be harmful to the home. And teach your children that also. Now I'm going to read also from this book called Tea Essentials. Tea Essentials, which was put out by Victoria Magazine in the early, I'm trying to think what date it was. I don't know if it matters or not, but it was 2009. And it's called Tea Essential, the Tea Companion, and I have been reading this to you, and I'm now going to read the article in here called Living with Tea. And it looks like this is set up as on a little table, a tea station somewhere in the house, which I have done in every room, and some rooms too, because then when I have the descendants over, they don't get all bottlenecked in one area in the kitchen, and they each have a place in their room. I know some people don't like other people standing behind them waiting for them to fix their refreshment, and other people just don't like to have other people watching what they do, and they just like the privacy, maybe staying in their room a little bit longer and having whatever they want as a refreshment while they get their mind in gear for the day. So I have a tea station in every room. In some rooms, there are 2 areas. It was just something that I enjoyed doing during the time when I had so many of my relatives over, and I needed to have the room to work in the kitchen. So I didn't want all these things, people coming in the kitchen for their drinks. So for the refreshments, so I just made trays and put tables around the house. So this is called Living with Tea. And it says, tea is such a pleasant part of our lives that its accoutrements have a sly way of escaping the table to join the general decor. Isn't that beautiful? Escaping the table to join the general decor. Indeed, the mere fact that we might have a round pedestal tea table anchoring a bouquet of tea roses, named for their similar scent, and that we set our table and measure our cooking ingredients with teaspoons are proof positive that tea has long been at home with us. But why stop there? Enlisting a favorite teapot or creamer to hold a clutch of wildflowers is only the beginning. One collector found herself selecting fabrics and rugs that played happily into the mood of her tea sets. Well, that's true, isn't it? Another tea lover ornaments her dining room sideboard with a handsome samovar. Still another hangs her grandmother's perforated tea balls on the side table as gleaming family ornaments. The kitchen is tea's cheerful home ground, a good place for a bit of whimsy in the wallpaper or a show of colorful crockery. If the tea blends you start to collect overflow the cabinet, why not dedicate an open shelf to them, all fresh in rows of the old-fashioned labeled tins with tight lids called caddies? Then whatever your mood, you'll be able to reach for the right tea. One particular useful invention, the table whose tray top is detachable, makes it easy to carry tea things from the kitchen without having to clear a surface to set them on. So that was one reason I just set permanent tables with trays on them so that I would not have to carry anything from the kitchen. And so that way everyone is self-serving, and that we could devote ourselves to visiting and to fellowshipping, and that no one is burdened down trying to fix things for other people. They all get to learn how to do it themselves. Now the next one that I want to read is from the Jane Austen Diet by Brian Kozlowski, and I run across certain things that I haven't read aloud yet, and I'd like to read this one. It's on page 65. It's under the Pemberley meal plan, and it talks about how they had a breakfast. In other words, they break their fast, but they had a long fast, and they didn't eat right away when they first woke up. Austen would have also delayed drinking coffee or tea during her before breakfast fast. This was mostly for economic reasons. Coffee and tea were expensive commodities in the Regency era, and I explained to you what the Regency era was. You can look that up, and what all the different cultural things that were going on at the time. It's one of my favorite eras to emulate in my home, besides the Victorian era, which came later. It was reserved for everyone gathered for breakfast, but there's a biological reason to adopt the same practice today. Consumed first thing in the morning, the caffeine in coffee especially can interfere with your body's natural ability to wake up on its own. Caffeine specifically suppresses cortisol, the wake-up hormone. Naturally present in the morning, cortisol can get you up and alert faster than anything from caffeine. But caffeine, if taken too early, can override cortisol's natural rhythm, making you more tired and more reliant on caffeine to get the same buzz you could have gotten naturally. So do what Austen did. No need to banish coffee, just postpone it for about an hour after rising. Enough time for cortisol to work in its own way. As for the type of breakfast Austin recommends, that is left to your own choice. You are free to enjoy a hearty breakfast or a lighter fare. Most Austinites do prefer lighter breakfast in general, opting for simple variations on toast and tea, the most popular breakfast in the Regency era. I wanted to stop and mention that though it says toast and tea, it wasn't the devitamized bread that we have that's commercial today. I remember my mother's bread and have tried to emulate it many times. It was homemade bread. We didn't have there. You could get commercial bread, but my mother, having a large family, made the bread, and it was so wholesome and so loaded with nutrients that came naturally from all the things she put in it, that you could survive on tea and toast, because in that bread you'd be getting a lot of other things, not just carbs. I'm going to read from Simple Social Graces by Linda Lichter, because I think this is important to the home. We're studying today, ladies. I'm homeschooling you. You can actually be autodidactic and be self-taught and homeschool yourself. And that's what I'm trying to say, is that if someone asks you what you're doing today, you make a list, of course, of how you're going to learn something today or read about something today, and keep yourself active, keep your mind active at home. And I think that homemaking itself makes us very mentally active. Even the simple things like washing the dishes, baking bread, or making beds and sweeping have a lot of time for you to think. They really balance your brain, and you may be thinking, how could I do this in a different way, or get new ideas as you work. And I will be making a bed and thinking, I don't like this sort of fabric here, so I'm going to change it, and to make things better for our home. And so it's important to read books like this, but I'm reading this to you called Simple Social Graces. And if I did have a school at Ashcombe, I would. That's a la Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. The School at Ashcombe, remember that? I know, why don't you take her to the School at Ashcombe? Isn't that a capital idea? This is called Relearning the Respect for the Power and Beauty of Language, and this is so important for the home. If you want to have a cohesive family and a happy home, language has to be respected. Not just your own language, whether it's English, whether it's Spanish, whatever it is, but not to disintegrate it into insulting language or disrespectful way of speaking. When she says language, she means the way of speaking, because the people in your home are going to go out there, maybe for work or for whatever it is they do, and they'll bring home some of these attitudes, and after a while they might think, our family is pretty strange. They better get with it. Maybe we ought to make them more worldly. So I'll bring home this phrase, or I'll bring home this way of talking that has rubbed off on me from my peers. And we don't want that. We want to be uniquely our own with a pure language. So I used to wonder when I was really young, before I was so wise and vital, oh God, why did you make me speak this language? How come I wasn't born into this language or this country or this culture? And I learned through some of our really good homeschool materials back in the olden days. We had some really good things on character, that whatever language you have, you're born into, that you're taught to by your parents, is that language is the one you're going to use to praise God and to build up other people and to speak love and happipiness and to speak intelligently with. So whatever it is, it's a tool that God has given you, and wherever you were born there's a reason for it that can be used for God's glory. And this is so important because when I grew up in public school, these questions were never answered. These questions are deep within a child so that they can gather all the things of his identity. And we don't have that when we're going to public school and we're mainly bombarded with knowledge. Knowledge, 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 not wisdom, not understanding, not good judgment, not honesty, and not respect for our parents, and not honoring it. We're not taught all those things. Public school couldn't possibly cover all that. They're too much into something else, and it's mainly knowledge. And from the Bible it says knowledge puffs up. We have to be careful with it, because you can teach a child knowledge, but you have to teach them how to use it. So this chapter's on page 102, Relearning Respect for the Power and Beauty of Language. Now I'll read to you something that I think you might find entertaining, but in a way is kind of serious. And it's about, I never liked, I have to be honest with you, I never liked the author Samuel Clemens, who had the pen name Mark Twain. I never liked him, never approved him. Even when I was growing up and we read all those books, I thought, I'm never going to let my children read these books. And I have my own personal reasons from researching his background as to why I didn't approve of him for my home school. But listen to this. In 1877, a speech that Mark Twain gave at a dinner attended by, he was really quite a crude man, attended by three cultural icons, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Oliver Wendell Holmes, to which my mother-in-law always said that she was related to. Oliver Wendell Holmes. That would mean Mr. S is related to Oliver Wendell Holmes. And Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I believe Henry Wadsworth Longfellow might have written that poem about the home. He was called the family poet in his day. In 1877, the irrepressible Twain concocted a spoof, complete with his signature dead-on dialect. And I can remember this kind of attitude kind of seeping down into the 50s and 60s, where it was quite smart to play a trick on someone or have a spoof joke or some kind of a play. And I remember watching one once in high school. Not good. The irrepressible Twain concocted a spoof complete with his signature dead-on dialect, in which these honored guests became grotesque tramps who invaded a miner's cabin. In his comic narrative, they ate the miner's food, drank his booze, cheated him at cards, and stole his only pair of boots. And as I was reading this, I was thinking of this dead-on dialect, and how it crept into our society, and how I first, I was about 16 years old, someone said something so shocking, and I was just so shocked that I went to someone else and said, what was that about? Wasn't that rude? And they said, oh, everybody's talking that way these days. You shouldn't be so upset. Twain's wit badly misfired. Witnesses said the entire audience turned to stone with horror. One attendee described the wall-to-wall silence as weighing many tons to the square inch. Now, isn't that witty? Twain later said that the incident pretty near killed me with shame. Although he wrote letters of apology to the three revered butts of his joke, one biographer said that the event dogged him for the rest of his life. 10 years afterwards, newspapers still referred to it as evidence that Twain had no reliable sense of propriety. Today, professional insult mongers take the shtick to the bank. Not that Victorians didn't appreciate humor. Twain was a legend in his own lifetime, but even legends were not excused when they broke the cardinal law best summarized by the late 19th century poet Will Carleton. I read this to you last time, I think. Careful with fire is good advice, we know. Careful with words is 10 times doubly so. And the Bible talks about the tongue being a fire. That's why we have to be so careful. And that our thoughts are what come out into words. And that's why the Bible says, take captive every thought. You lock up any kind of derogatory thought or thing that you shouldn't say to someone or about something. You lock it up if it's not good, and you don't let it out. take it captive. And it's a figure of speech. And it talks about, if you do let it out, it's like a fire. It's hard to put out. If any of you have accidentally caught a field on fire, you'll understand this. Relearning respect for the power and beauty of language. Propriety was not the only reason the Victorians took care in their choice of language. Now, language, she's not talking about different languages. She's talking about the choice of words. Like the 17th century English clergyman Robert Burton, they believed a blow with a word strikes deeper than a blow with a sword. But their posture was neither negative nor defensive. They simply loved and respected language, a loss that has cost us the most effective means of fulfilling our increasingly desperate quest to communicate. You think of being a small child, how delighted your child was, or you were with your child, when they started to speak the language and say things and repeat words, and how exciting it was to hear them repeat words, and the attention that we gave them when they said something, and they could even repeat 3 and 4 syllable words that be quite shocking that they learned so well just from us. You are brighter than you think you are. You taught your child your own language. As a child, Edith Wharton, that was another biographer and writer of the 1800s, learned a new reverence for the English language that was as authoritative an element as tradition was in social conduct. That's a hard one to understand. A new reverence for the English language that was as authoritative an element. The language is as authoritative, the reverence for it. Both language and friends, she said, were always treated with courtesy. You see, it's so connected. The friendship, we're looking at someone, we're speaking to them, the language goes with it, doesn't it? This sort of testimony belies the modern assumption that the self-censorship required by civility stifles creativity. And this is what the opponents of the Victorian society were constantly up to back in the day. When the Victorians lived, there were always those who were trying to disintegrate the whole idea of manners and the whole idea of good language. They said that if you self-censored, you would stifle creativity. They said that when civility required you to self-censor or be quiet or not say something rude, it would stifle your creativity. In fact, in a previous broadcast, I talked to you about how they said the Victorians were so strict and so prudish that they couldn't even live up to their own ideals. Well, every society, every era has people that can live up to whatever's good, pure, and lovely, and people that won't. And that doesn't mean that the rules should be abandoned just because some people can't or don't want to live up to them. But they wanted to smash it completely, because people, quote, couldn't live up to it, couldn't live up to good manners, couldn't live up to kindness and goodness and love and joy and peace. They just couldn't live up to it. So let's just abolish it. Let's make it not viable at all. And that's what we have come to now. If anything, it nourished the creative impulse by demanding discipline and discernment from the Victorian-era writers. And they mentioned all these writers: Henry James, Jane Austen, etc. Even common folk spoke and wrote in a language that would put to shame many modern writers who earn large sums and critical acclaim for their blunt and unrefined prose. And you can all think of the books that we were told we had to read in high school. Terrible books with a lot of fearful things in them and bad language that we were, and even recently kids have to read. It's just awful. And that's one good reason to homeschool, is you get to choose. If you don't like the books, you can just write one yourself, or it's just as long as it has the elements in it that you want, the good language and the good thoughts and the principles and character that you want them taught. Even common folk spoke and wrote in language that would put to shame many modern writers who earned large sums and critical acclaim for their blunt and unrefined prose. You know, they'll promote, back in the 50s and 60s, there'd be some awful writer that would be promoted as, oh, look, there's so much depth in this, there's so much meaning in this. And this is one of the things that I think young people suffered from, even in the day, and that was that we often thought that saying, hello, how are you, it's a nice day, what have you been doing lately, didn't have depth, but it was very important as a warm-up conversation to start with those small things, those small niceties, so that you don't hit somebody with a controversy right away or something that is offensive right away, and that you talk back and forth with this light sort of I guess you would call it just light talk, until you could feel them out as to what they represented or what they believed, so that you wouldn't be offensive and that you could go maybe on another level. But some people didn't believe in this polite conversation, and they didn't like to say thank you or goodbye or good morning or anything because they felt it was trivial. And so we want to get back to that. You know, even at home, sometimes we don't, say goodbye or good morning or anything because we see each other all the time and maybe we just kind of overlook it. Many people were amazed to hear the incredible richness and eloquence of expression in the letters between soldiers and their wives, which were featured in a PBS documentary on the Civil War. Would that such beautiful language were still part of our common daily discourse. I feel sorry for many young people in the dating world. They are not going to get the letters, the ones that our parents tied up in ribbon in bundles. They did not exchange letters because they're so they present themselves in such a common and easy way, and they're available all the time, that they're not getting the letters. And if I were to guide a courtship, what I would do is suggest that they write letters, stay off of the text, and write letters. Contemporary writers who use literature to shock or deconstruct rather than to edify or ennoble might well benefit from the less candor and more self-censorship. That's all the Bible means. That's the same thing as self-control. Self-control, I think, starts with the tongue. And Linda Lichter believed that the tongue, when the language disintegrated, she thought that the manners would disintegrate, because then, and then after that would come more casual dress and less respect in their table manners or anything. She thought it all started with the language. I am not sure, but maybe it starts with the thoughts, because that's why the Bible says, take captive every thought. And we can educate our thinking. We can educate our children's thinking with things that are good and lovely and pure, and educate them with good things. And develop the mind. The Bible says, love God with all your heart and with all your mind and with all your soul. Well, the powers that be have no trouble with us loving God with all our heart, being religious, going to church, and our soul. They know that belongs to God, and they have no trouble with us with that. But what they want to steal is the mind, because the mind controls those two things. And you cannot love God with all your mind if your mind is being taken away for education and knowledge. So you have to also love God with your knowledge and your education. And that's why many of us decided to homeschool. We knew what our experience was in the public school. Maybe it wasn't horrifically bad, but was lacking in something, and also created a lot of sadness and depression because it did not lift us up. Restricted expression can be a rewarding challenge when the restrictions are self-imposed and widely accepted. We have been reduced to a literal but limited vocabulary. Too often, the beauty of tact. That's another thing you can study, ladies. You can look this word up, tact. And subtlety is discarded in favor of cold, brute honesty. In so doing, we have forgotten the value of graceful communication. I have time now to read Victorian silent languages. I think you will like this. Consider the lost Victorian legacy of silent languages, which once textured life with nuance. Now, this is not talking about the quietness we experience between you speaking and then I answer. I think we answer too quickly because we're used to being in an environment of radio and television where every space is filled with noise because it used to cost money. I know Mr. S used to go to the radio station, the Christian radio station, and do a broadcast of a sermon, and he had to pay for it, and so many minutes you had to cram in so many words because you were charged by the minute. And so we're used to that, but I know there are some cultures that will wait after someone has spoken. There'll be a little silence there while they think and let it sit in, and they don't jump right in. And we need to teach our children to do that because there's a bad habit of jumping in at the end of a sentence that someone else has said, or talking over somebody, talking at the same time. We call it talking over someone. It's just to drown them out. Very rude. But this is a different silent languages thing. The only silent language we still vaguely remember was the language of the fan. The faintest movements of these lace, silk, satin, and feathery confections conveyed a world of meaning that was widely understood. But for the Victorians, life and love, like God and the devil, were in the details. And so there were ways. I remember there was a story told of a woman that got herself in a conversation that was very difficult and uncomfortable. So she waved her fan a lot faster to indicate her displeasure. Between expressing extremes of love and hate, through the fan, a woman could apologize for a tiff. A right-handed twirl warned the hopeful swain he was being watched and disapproved by a parent. And there were just, she describes all the little, and this is on page 103 if you want to go read it yourself. She accepted an offer, or she refused, or she said that your time is up simply by different taps on the fan. Even the fluttering motion held meaning. In 1832, the magazine essayist Joseph Addison wrote, "There is the angry flutter, the modest flutter, the timorous flutter, and the amorous flutter. There is scarcely any emotion in the mind which does not produce a suitable agitation of the fan." And I remember, before we had air conditioning, some of you are vital, remember this, you could sit in church between women. Some of the men and boys liked to sit between their sisters or anywhere where there were women because they had fans and they could feel really cool if they sat between people who had fans. Nowadays, women must register their feelings with bluntness. And as many women have discovered, the subtlety of a look, the frosty tone of the voice or body language is lost on most contemporary people. If women still had such powerful and unambiguous nonverbal language at their fingertips, they could indulge their feelings and spare those of other people by mutually humiliating public clashes. The equivalent of a properly wielded fan might prevent a few harassment suits. It would certainly restore a picturesque and civilized quality to the often ugly exchanges between people. Yes, that is so true. Now, to top it off, I want to read to you about, I just want to introduce you to a book called Once Upon a Time, The Way America Was by Eric Sloane. If you can order some Eric Sloane's books, they're published by Dover Publications, and they're very wholesome and good for children, and they explain how things were built. But it isn't just, it says the way of life in America. This was all over the world at the same time. Taught you how a rocking chair was made, how different things are made, how a basket was made, and it talked about the home. And so when I read to you, once upon a time the American home was more than just an address. I will read to you this next time, but I just wanted you to know it wasn't just America. It was all over the world. There were, at the same time, where you saw castles and highly advanced civilization, there were always those that could that lived in a less exalted place and built their own places, and how it all worked, and we still have the patterns for all those things. So many of us who are homesteading will love these books. And so, ladies, until I see you next time, please stay close to Christ. Thank you for all that you do for me, and I will see you next time. Bye.